The Dingers podcast is on the air. I'm your host, Mitch. I'm here with Jake and our buddy, Miguel Esparza, the Spanish Cubs broadcaster. We're excited to have you on and hear a little bit about your story and talk some Chicago Cubs tonight. So first, welcome, Miguel, to the Dingers podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Jake, pleasure to meet you. Mitch, saw you in Iowa, so good to see you again.
Yeah, let's jump right into your story because I want to hear one. You kind of blew up last year.
Yeah.
You posted a video of your kind of like face cam of you doing. You've been doing radio broadcasts for the Cubs for a while, but you kind of burst onto the scene, got really popular of hearing your energy and seeing your energy with a face cam. I think it was a Javi Baez play, was it?
Yeah, that was the first one I posted. Yeah, Javi. It was against Amir Garrett.
Yeah,
Javi spent in center field walk off. You know, it didn't leave the park, but it was still a walk off. So it was pretty exciting. And that from there it just trickled down. And I said, well, that my phone didn't stop all night and all day the next day. So I was like, okay, so this is a thing, you know. So I started recording anytime we went into the ninth inning and had an opportunity to win it in walk off fashion. Last year we had plenty of those in the second half, even after the Javi Baez one. So every time I would bring out the camera and it just worked, you know. So, and for big moments, I recorded Wilson Contreras 100th home run. So those, anytime there's something big that can happen, I'll pop out the camera and, you know, just record just in case.
I mean, your energy, I have a clip of just the energy that you bring. I think this is a Contreras. I just love the energy you bring. Like, is that like just naturally just overflow from being a fan, or what is that? Where does it come from?
It is. You know, I'm a fan, man. I'm a Cubs fan, born and raised. There's no other team for me, you know. So just being able to be in that booth, I'm a fan in there. And I always go back to Ron Santo, like when I would hear him and his excitement and his pain and anguish when everything was going, you know. I guess I kind of molded or modeled myself from what Ron Santo would do in that sense, because he showed that it's okay to be excited. Sometimes I get messages like, why aren't you excited for the other team? Why don't you call it even? I said, because I work for the Cubs, you know. Well, I work for Univision, but I'm broadcasting for the Cubs, so I'm going Cubs, you know.
And you grew up in Chicago, so you've grown up a Cubs fan, correct?
Born and raised in Chicago, yeah. So I grew up here. I went to school here. Everything. I've always lived here. So it's man, it's sweet.
We met at the Field of Dreams, and you, like, right away, like, I connected with you right away. Like, your authenticity, you're real, you're a good human being. Like, it was just great meeting you. You could just feel how nice of a guy you were, like, just our short conversation. And I was like, dude, I need to talk with that guy again. And so I tried to find you later just to be able to connect more and talk, because I was like, I gotta have this guy on my podcast. But what really intrigued me about you was you told me a story about your dad bringing you to the Field of Dreams when you were a kid, and now you got to bring him back there for the Cubs Field of Dreams game. And like, so just tell me a little bit about that whole story.
Yeah, you know, my dad's amazing. You know, that in general, I could open up with that. Like he always did everything for us to be able to just enjoy the little things in life. You know, we always had everything and anything we needed. And he would always make sure that summers were for trips, and we would go Wisconsin Dells, we would go anywhere, Pennsylvania, Texas, anywhere you name it. And when that movie came out, you know, at some point, you know, we used to go to Iowa a lot, especially to Dubuque to watch bald eagles. My dad loves bald eagles, so we would go out there. And then one day he was like, we're just going to go by, you know, the movie set for Field of Dreams. And yeah, it was pretty cool. I'll tell you this, I don't remember much of the experience itself, but I know that he did take us there. And so driving back this time around, you know, I was driving, and then when we were getting closer, he says, you know what, like, it's crazy. He says, dreams come true, because I remember when I brought you as a kid. Now we're coming over here for you to broadcast a game, you know, and that in itself, it's just like, dude, like, can't beat it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that was just such a cool story to hear that now you're bringing him back, and yeah, that whole thing. Like, uh, but I want to know, like, what kind of got you into broadcasting in the first place? What was kind of the path that led you to become the Cubs Spanish broadcaster?
Well, in general, broadcasting, I know we talked a little bit about it, but I've been in broadcasting for 22 years now, actually. I've been saying 21 all year, but it's 22. I came into broadcasting in 2000. And no, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. It was 2001. So there you go. I'm fine. Anyway, but it was that long ago. And it was just, I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life, kind of deal. You know, I knew for sure I wasn't going to go to college. I didn't want to do it. I wanted absolutely nothing with going to school and trying to learn some English and some more math and all the stuff we learned through high school and grammar school. So I was like, you know what? Let me figure out my life. And sure enough, just one night, I always say that radio fell into my lap because I was watching late night TV and a commercial came on for a school for radio, and it intrigued me, you know. So I was like, hey, why not? You know, let's give it a try. I logged onto my computer, went on their website, and when I say logged on, I had to go disconnect the phone and connect the computer that long ago. And but yeah, so took a tour, and shortly after I was enrolled into school, I was hired. I started an internship a couple of months later. And before I actually graduated, I was already working as a board op for a local station here in Chicago. So it moved pretty quick for me. But it's always been the hard work, because I started as an intern in promotions, and from there on out, I always knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on air, and I let my superiors know that was my goal. You know, that's something that I wanted to do. And yeah, so I went and I literally knocked on the program director's door one day, and I said, listen, you know, I've been here for a couple of months already. I'm an intern. She said, well, I know who you are. I've seen how hard you work. So, you know, I definitely know about you. And I said, well, you know, I'm looking for an opportunity to work on air. And she said, on air, I don't have anything now, but I do have a position for a board op overnight weekends. Are you interested? I said, absolutely. And never stopped from there. Shortly after, about a couple of months later, about maybe 2 months later, I actually asked her again. I said, listen, it was a Saturday morning shift that I was covering. I asked her, can I go on air? She says, Miguel, I've never heard you, so I don't even know if you're even good enough to go on air, right? So I told her, I said, listen, just give me this opportunity. I know I won't let you down. So what happens? I go on air. She says before, she's like, okay, I'm going to be listening. When she says I'm going to be listening, my legs are like, you know, just wobbly. I'm like, okay, so now what, right? But I go on air, and shortly after the lights flashing, that's our hotline. I pick it up. She's like, Miguel, you sound great. Continue the rest of the shift. Just go on air like normally, like all the other, you know, shifts that we have. And that was it. I never stopped.
That's awesome.
So, so I've got like this leads. I'm going to go a little off script here, Mitch, because it opens a lot of questions for me, because I've always been really interested in radio broadcast, whether it's as a career or just like listening to it. I mean, I grew up, my dad always had the Cubs broadcasts on, or whatever sports radio station was the tune of the day that he wanted to listen to. So like my first question, I guess, is how did you find like your radio voice? Because like I think that listening to a lot of broadcasters, I mean, they've got that deep voice that just like, it just feels like it's naturally, like it belongs on the airwaves. Did you have to like cultivate that, or was it just something kind of like you just like were kind of doing your own voice, and it just?
Yeah, no, I actually, you know, so when I went into radio and I started, I would actually try to change my voice.
Yeah.
And just try to, and one day a program director, that was probably I want to say my second or third program director that I had. He said, Miguel, why are you trying to change your voice when you have a naturally good voice? Like, why are you trying to change it when your voice is already good? He says, like, and this is like something that's always stayed with me. And this goes out to anybody out there trying to be a broadcaster. Think about this. When somebody talks to you, and if you sound a certain way when you're talking and a certain way on the radio, then it doesn't make sense. It doesn't click. And that was kind of what was happening in the beginning of my career, where he was like, if I talk to you outside of the station, I can't tell it's you, because I was trying to just change the voice in a certain way where it was a little bit thinner and maybe a little bit, I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it, but it made so much sense to me that after that, I was able to just use my voice, which, it's not bad, so,
No,
that was like,
it's a great voice. And like, this was one of the questions that I wanted to ask later on, but I think it just like, for people, tuned in now, you got to sing the seventh inning stretch on, was that Friday or Saturday?
Friday.
And I was watching the game, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast, but because it took me a second. I don't think I heard right away that it was you singing it. The camera flashed. I was like, oh my gosh, that's Miguel. One of the best, take me out to the ball game performances that I've ever heard. And not just gassing you up because you're here. You have serious pipes, and Crawley posted on Twitter later that day, yes, this video. What can you see? What you doing to me?
Crawley.
So, I mean, that's serious, man. Has there been a musical exploration throughout your career?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of that background.
So I've always wanted to sing. That's my first love. That's my first passion. So going back to how I started in radio and why it made so much sense to me while I was watching late night TV and that commercial came on, for me, it was like, wait, I could go on the radio and then I'll record some music and then I'll play it on the radio. And it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't, but I did record a CD, 2007. And this was in Spanish. I love banda music, which is like a combination of tubas, trombones, trumpets. It's great. It really is. So that I was like, you know what? I want to record something, and I pocketed it. I was like, you know what? This is something that I'm always going to cherish and have. And with that CD, I actually toured a little bit locally. Nice. I went to Pennsylvania. I performed at Aragon Ballroom here in Chicago. So it was good. It gave me that little, that's what I wanted to do. So I kind of got a taste of it. And right now you could go on Spotify and find my music. And one day
we'll be doing that later tonight.
Yeah, and this was I want to say it was a couple of months ago. One of my little nephews, we were just having a conversation, and I was like, yeah, you can find me on Spotify. He was like, no, I can't. What are you talking about, And he actually went on Spotify. When this kid saw that, he was like mind blown. And he was like, wait, you're on Spotify, So it was, it's one of those things that I always knew that I can have. And then later on in my career, I was an Elvis tribute artist. And so that was another thing that was just crazy. There was a period in my life where I wasn't at a radio station here in Chicago. I was working remotely for a station in Kentucky and doing some stuff for Mexico as well. So while I was not doing that for those stations, I actually became a blackjack dealer dressed as Elvis, and I would perform after my hour on the table dealing blackjack.
Amazing.
Dude, what can't you do?
One of the best things that I've ever done in my life, and I've done a lot of things, that was one of them, just because I'm a huge Elvis fan from a very, very young age. And just, being able to do that. After that, there was an older gentleman who I met at the casino, invited me into a oldies band, and that was just even better, So I became part of the band.
Yeah.
I learned so much about singing because these guys were all retired music teachers. So it was just like, dude, I was a sponge absorbing everything. And that's where I learned how to sing, because I thought I knew until I met them. And it was just like, dude, just a complete different story. So it's been, once again, going back to music, that's always what I wanted to do. Cubs, I did this last year for the Cubs, the seventh inning stretch and the national anthem. And the pressure was there. But this year I felt like there was so much more pressure, just because this year, once again, there were some good calls out there and just getting a little bit more attention my way. So I felt like this was the pressure was just incredible this time around.
And for Friday, it was for Heritage or Hispanic Heritage Day at Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
Did they do anything else at Wrigley Field to celebrate, or what was kind of the day like?
Yeah. It was cool because they had mariachis outside of Gallagher Way. They were doing tequila tastings. They had that was fun in itself. The bobblehead, obviously, which is right over here, that was cool. Those Cubs bobblehead. And a lot of people. There was a lot of people there that were very happy that the Cubs were embracing the Hispanic heritage, and that's something that for us has been a great relationship. The Cubs have really done a great job with myself and our team just to be able to be more inclusive all around. And this event was just wonderful. I think everyone that was there enjoyed it.
Awesome. But you don't only just do the Cubs Spanish broadcast. You do the Blackhawks, the Bears. What other sport?
That's it. I did the Bulls for a couple of years. But then it was just too much on my plate, and it was just like, okay, I need to let go of something here. And so the company said, okay, we're going to split up some teams, and you'll be in charge of Blackhawks and Cubs. And then with the Bears, I switched back and forth from analyst and play-by-play. So I'll be play-by-play this coming up Sunday against the Texans. And that's another thing that the Bears are celebrating as well, the Hispanic Heritage Month. They're going to have my highlights from that first half on the big video boards throughout that halftime. So that's going to be pretty cool as well.
So how do you prepare differently for the sports? They're so different. Like baseball's a little bit slower. Like hockey, it's like, I don't know how I could never do hockey. Football,
I don't know.
There's some stoppage. Like how do you prepare?
I really don't know how I get it done. I can say this: I'm blessed. I think that I'm beyond blessed with the ability and the talent that I was given, because it's hard. It really is hard. When you talk about the pace of each game, baseball, there's a lot of time for conversations, and you can fill it in with all kinds of different stats. Football, when we have so many players in and out from both sides, and you have defense, you have special teams, offense, it's just so I'm give a secret. I don't know all the numbers and names corresponding to each player. I always have my flip card because it would be impossible for me to remember them all. And so, I always have my flip card handy, because I think by the fourth or fifth for the Bears, I'll have it down to where I can definitely, see. But we also have to look at pronunciations for all the players, both sides, so that's a big part of my job. I have to make sure that I pronounce their names correctly. And that's one of the things that with hockey, it's so much harder. You have all the names, Canadians, European names, French names, you have it all.
Quick. You're rattling them off so quickly.
Yeah. So for every game, I'm there 3 hours prior for Bears, for Cubs, and for Blackhawks. And the preparation, like you said, is different. Blackhawks, most of that preparation will be on names. I will take a big chunk of my time making sure that I have the pronunciations. And I don't know if you guys know Gene Honda. He's the PA announcer for the White Sox and the Blackhawks. And what he does, he has a sheet with pronunciations on them. And this man is just so nice that one day he saw me on my laptop looking at the names. He's like, "Oh, you use that? Okay." The next game he comes with a sheet for me as well. So now he does that for me also. So it's a big part of that preparation. The pace is just unreal for hockey. You have to be so fast and detailed, because I'm broadcasting for radio, not TV. So TV, it's easier. It really is, because there are spaces where you can leave without any kind of anything, and people are watching it. I have to explain exactly everything that's going on that hockey rink. So it's hard, but very rewarding when you're able to see that work and see that these teams are appreciating what we're doing. Like the Blackhawks, they have a new team in place behind the scenes, and they're really embracing what we've been doing with the Cubs. So I don't know if you guys recently saw an announcement with their new announcers. They included us, and that's something that didn't happen in the past, So that's big for us. Just making those small little steps. And like I said, the Blackhawks have been great with us. The Bears are also they've really seen the necessity and the growth specifically with the Cubs and what we've been able to do.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, so I kind of want to go back to, we asked about how you got into broadcasting, and
Yeah.
I love the pestering the station manager and saying like, hey, just like being, because you got to be proactive. I mean, that's how, if you want to get what you want to get, you got to do that.
Yeah.
So how long did it take from running that first show on your own, where she was letting you go with it, to your first broadcasting, like sports broadcasting position? Because I think it's important for young people aspiring, like in my professional job, like hearing that how long some people had to work. It's like, oh, okay, so I just got to keep paying my dues. So how long did it take for you?
Well, so when I first came in, it was 2001. I came back to that same station back in 2013.
Okay.
So when I came back to that station, we go back to asking, right, what you want. And the first time I sat with the person who hired me, at the time they were broadcasting the Bears. So the first thing I told her, I was like, listen, I'm coming back. I'm happy to be back. However, I do want to let you know what my goals are this time around. And I told her two things that I want. I want the morning show host. I want to be the morning show host. And I also want to broadcast the Bears games. That's what I want to do. I said, I'm not telling you to make any changes. I'm just letting you know what I want, and within 3 months, I was the morning show host and the play-by-play for the Bears.
That's awesome.
And it was, and because they knew they wanted to make a change, right? And because I let them know from the beginning that I was interested, I received the call. Miguel, we heard you were interested in broadcasting the Bears. Do you have a demo? I said, yes, absolutely. I didn't have a demo, but
I was going to ask, how do you put a demo together? Yeah.
I went on YouTube. I recorded my audio watching the Bears game, and I sent them the demo, and they liked it and hired me. So that was a Wednesday. And my first game was Monday Night Football against the Packers. So, it was just,
okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, and it was, one of those things that we go back to, sometimes we're afraid to ask, and when you do, you get it, and that was the same deal with the Blackhawks, Miguel. And this time around, Miguel, my boss asked me, she needed somebody to fill in. Miguel, can you broadcast hockey? Absolutely. Yes. I had seen probably 4 hockey games in my life. I didn't know. I had no idea what icing was. I had no idea anything. So I went on YouTube again. YouTube's my best friend, if you haven't noticed by now. So I went on YouTube and I pulled up some hockey 101 videos. That's how I learned. Like I just started going over all that and finding online anything that I can with the rules. And now I'm play-by-play for the Blackhawks, so, and it comes back to taking the opportunities and asking for them as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. Do you have any, every broadcaster has their things they say, like Pat Hughes is fasten those seatbelts, those things that they say. Do you have your phrases that you hit, and how do they translate to English?
Well, so I think that the most popular one for me would be La Botó, which is the home run. So once that ball, because it's tricky, there's some that it looks like it's going and then it just stays in the park, and then you kind of but you still that excitement. And sometimes I'll go, it's fine. It's there's an opportunity for it to go out. And then once it goes, it's La Botó, I'll throw in maybe the home run first. I'll call it a home run. I won't say quadrangular. I'll say it maybe. So I have one of the things that is big for me, and it's been this way for many years. I communicate both in English and Spanish. So I feel that a lot of our listeners are like me. They were born here in Chicago or in the United States, and they speak both languages. So I'm not afraid to throw in home run or any little word here and there. I'm not afraid to do it because I know that we understand. So for the most part, the first thing that comes out of my mouth, if it's like a line drive, it's gone, I'll say right off the bat, home run, whoever it was. I'll yell out home run, and then I'll throw in La Botó, and then at the end when they come around the plate, I'll just give quadrangular number whatever it was. So quadrangular is translation, it's Spanish for home run. So I'll just throw. So I mix it all up in there, and it works. It's fun. But throughout that, like Pat Hughes is just fantastic. Pat Hughes, what can you say? And such a great human being. Like it's so good to see. And I had conversations with him recently about the induction into the Cubs Hall of Fame. And he said something that was very key and very important. I think that it goes for a lot of us when you do the right things. He said, Miguel, all I'm doing is my work, and I'm doing it the right way, and I'm working hard. That's as long as you do that, I think you'll be good.
Yeah. I looked up. What can you say about Pat Hughes, right? Just as a quick aside, I was talking. So I live up in Madison, in enemy territory. Yesterday was a rough one. Yesterday was brutal. I got picked out of a crowd at the coffee shop this morning. The barista knows I'm a Bears fan, and she goes, "How's it feel to be a loser?" And I was like, I can't deal with that today. It's not great. But my buddy and I were talking about Pat, and it just when you grow up a Cubs fan, it doesn't take long for you to register, wow, we're really lucky to be able to listen to this guy.
Oh yeah.
What can you tell us about what's your relationship like with Pat, and what's it like to be, his counterpart? I mean, you're the Spanish counterpart, and that's so cool, man.
It's so cool.
No, it is. It's real cool. It's like one of those things that I think about it all the time. I look to my right and I see Pat, and I'm like really, this is where I get to sit and work? Really? And it really is one of those things that once again, I go back, I'm blessed, and such a great guy. I was walking to the restroom before the game. We all do it, obviously. And Pat was grabbing some salad and getting ready for the game. And he stops me. He says, Miguel, he says, what a great rendition of the anthem and the stretch. And he stopped me and complimented me about it so much. And last week I reached out to Pat. I caught him. So here's like a behind the scenes. It's hilarious. Like sometimes you'll see during the 7th inning stretch, all the broadcasters will be in the restroom at the same time. Like it's crazy. That's our break. And so conversations are interesting, and so we were having a conversation, and I said, Pat, do you still sell your scorecards from Game 7? I said, because I want one, but I want one that says to my friend Miguel, and he says, yes, absolutely. I said, how can I purchase it and get you to personalize it? He says, Miguel, I can't sell you that. I can't sell it to you. I'll get you one. Just give me your home address, and I'll send it over to you. Those little things that he doesn't have to do, but he's just a great guy all around. And we've talked a lot about Elvis. They're always great conversations with Pat.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I also so obviously, we touched on all the different sports that you've done. I think too, talking about the work that you put in with hockey, I don't watch a ton of hockey, frankly. I just wasn't raised on it, but I got spoiled. I got to go to a lot of Badger hockey games when I was in school here at Wisconsin. And it's so exciting. So
yeah.
The payoff when you kind of feel that rush of a call for hockey, and then it is a goal, that's got to be a great feeling, right? I mean, it begs the question, you've probably gotten to call you've definitely gotten to call some great moments over the years. When you're looking across all of the sports, if you could pick one that was most memorable for you, do you have one?
I can't say that I do. But for example, if you get over here on this side, that Urlacher, that was one of the first events that I covered, and it was the NFC Championship game at Soldier Field. So I made sure that I had something that would commemorate that for me. I'm one to a lot of the stuff that I collect are because they mean something to me. To my over this shoulder, this is Julio Chavez. Growing up, boxing was huge, and for me, he was just like the best, and when he lost his first fight, I cried, so I was a kid and I was crying, so I made sure I had that. When we talk about Patrick Kane and what he's done, so when the 1000th game of Patrick Kane, they gave these away. And and I made sure that I got one. I usually don't get these things in a nice letter, but then in a raffle I won this one.
Oh, that's awesome. So for listeners, he's holding up the 1000th game poster for Patrick Kane, and he's got one signed. It says Showtime. That's awesome. Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to frame these side by side.
Yeah.
See, so you could get the letter on one and then, the front on the other. So, like I said, there's so many different things that I've experienced in that sense that I can't really pinpoint one. When it comes to hockey itself, one of the first play-by-play that I did, they gave out a bobblehead. So I made sure I saved that bobblehead and I have it, so those little things that I like. Ben Zobrist. This came from Iowa.
I love Zobrist so much.
Yeah. So my father didn't have a ticket to the game, so they went to town there in Iowa, and Ben Zobrist was like at a convention or something they were holding there. So he brought me back a signed Ben Zobrist 8x10. So those are, like, I can say those little things, and when it comes to memorable things, I think one of the big ones definitely would be Patrick Kane, and when you get to see, like for me, a hat trick. I think I've already called two of his. So those are just little things that stick to you, And when we talk about the Cubs, I didn't get the 2016. I came in 2018, so kind of sucks, But I did see a lot of Javi home runs and Rizzo and Bryant. So I'm hoping for the next couple of years to definitely be able to wear a ring on my finger at some point,
Yeah.
I think it's shaping up. I mean, so you get to watch this team every day.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, and so you're in it and you're researching the statistics. You are going much deeper than the average Cubs fan, quite obviously. What do you see? Because I think the Cubs, I think they're now, after losing tonight, I think after the All-Star break, I think they are now even at 500 post All-Star break. So obviously something switched though, because they're playing better than they were before the All-Star break. What do you kind of see, with the future of this Cubs team? How do you feel? Do you feel optimistic? I mean, I think on the podcast here, I think we all agree that we feel optimistic.
Yeah.
What are your feelings?
No, I definitely feel optimistic about this team. I see players like Christopher Morel, like I see him, and that's just a bright spot, right? That's a player that can do it all. And from the moment I saw him, I'm going to plug in Baseball y Más on Cubs YouTube. Go check out that interview I did with Christopher. It's fantastic just because he's just such a great guy, and his authenticity that you have with him. And one of the things, and I talked to him about this when he first came up, and he told me, he's like, look, I told my coach that I was going to go get everything that I had because I didn't have a plan to go back to the minors. He came here and he meant business. So when I look at him, when I look at Nick Madrigal, at first I wasn't in on him, but when we were able to see, and it was because he was a Sox, obviously, but but when you see a healthy Nick Madrigal leading off, I think he showed us that he can be that that bright spot. And if we look at the infield in itself, we'll have Nico Horner, Nick Madrigal. We'll have Christopher Morel. I love Patrick Wisdom, great guy, but I think that he's not part of the future of where this team is going to have to build to be able to get to that next step and be able to be a championship caliber team. When we talk about first base, I'm still not too in on Alfonso Rivas. I think that more work has to happen. I know the last couple of weeks he's been doing real good. So we want to see if he can stay consistent with that. Then he could be one of those possibilities at first. I also like PJ Higgins at first. He's done great at first. So when we look at those young players, I think we have a good core of players. Ian Happen left, obviously. Seiya, I know Seiya is going to be way better next year. I think that he has that ability to make the adjustments. Now, center field, this is where the interesting part comes in. Who's going to come up? Who are we going to have for center field? Nelson Velasquez, I think Nelson has been struggling. He did show some power in the minors. We haven't seen that much of it yet. So I love his arm. His speed. I love it. Like, absolutely. I want to see that production with the bat, So when we look at that side of things, I think we're looking good. Rotation wise, when we look at Marcus Stroman, last outing was fantastic, and we've seen that from him, the last couple of outings. He's been coming into himself, and I think that's great. And he fits well with the Cubby culture. Like, I think that's such a big part of it as well. The Cub fans have embraced him, and he's great in that sense. So when we look at that rotation, players like him, I know that are going to be here. When we look at possibility of somewhere in that rotation, Adrian Sampson has been great as well. Like, we've seen what he's been able to do. I know he'll go for the Cubs tomorrow. Another player that I would love to see come back would be Franmil Reyes. I think that his whole everything changed for him when the moment he came over here. Yes, he's had his struggles in the last couple of games.
I don't mean to interrupt, because you're on a great role here, but like, can you speak to? I've heard a lot of stuff about Reyes being a really great clubhouse dugout presence. Have you heard stories about that or seen it in action yourself?
So my first interaction with him was in Iowa for the Field of Dreams. Okay. And I went and introduced myself, and the first thing he said, well, when I hit a home run, I want to make sure that you have a great call on my home run. I said, I will, as soon as I haven't had one yet. He hasn't hit one at Wrigley. So that's one of the things that I'm waiting for. But the interaction with him was very positive, and we see that relationship in between him, Morel. We've seen him joking around with Seiya Suzuki. Those are just little things that make a baseball team great. They're having fun, and I remember when Joe Madden would bring in the animals, and he'd be criticized for having like a little zoo at Wrigley Field and having them dress up for the trips and whatnot, but they were having fun. I think that's a big part of everything. If you're having fun, things are just going to fall into place. And for Franmil Reyes, he told me, he's like, I was in complete shock. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect that to happen to me. And, for me now, he wants to make sure he makes the best of this opportunity. So I would really love to see him come back. When we look at our bullpen, Manny Rodriguez, I think he's going to be great for us. I really do. When we look at him, what are we going to see from Cody Hoyer? I hope good things. I was broadcasting 2020 for the White Sox, and Cody Hoyer looked good. Like, there were moments there that I was like, okay, when that trade happened, I was like, okay, I'm not too mad about it, right? So that's another piece that I'm excited for, to see what he can provide in that bullpen. So I feel that and so many pieces still coming up from the minors that we're going to be able to see. We just had Esteban Quiroz debut this past weekend. They call him El Pony Quiroz in Mexico, and so he's one that's been very adamant about being able to get into the major leagues, and he finally did it. So it's one of those little things that we start seeing all these players, and I'm not going to say that he's going to be a great player, but he has the opportunity to take that and run with it, and we might see those good things from them. So I'm really excited. I am about the next week, or whatever is next couple of weeks that we have, next homestand, our last one here in Chicago. So I'm excited about that. I really am excited about the future with these Cubs.
Yeah, we have 15 games left after tonight. Yeah. We've seen Hayden Wesneski come in and 3 outings, pitch great. Like, do you see him fitting into the rotation next year? Do you see him like kind of solidifying that the rest of this year, and then going to spring training, just kind of building upon that? Like, what do you see out of him?
I really do. When we saw him coming in relief, and the way he pitched, what was it, 5 innings, 8 strikeouts that first outing, we were like, what is this? What's going on, right? And he had a rough one in between, but his first start was real good. You're talking about, you're out there for 7 innings and you only allow 1 run. That should be a winnable game for you. Unfortunately, we have the Michael Ruckers, we have the Rowan Wicks in there. Mark Leiter Jr. hasn't been all that bad, but when we have Rowan Wick, who we saw tonight, gave up a couple as well in a game that I think the Cubs should have won, but they just came at us. And when you don't have those solid pieces in the bullpen, I think it's definitely tough. But we look at him, we look at Wisniewski, we look at Javier Assad. Javier Assad has been looking great for the Cubs as well. And those are players. Now, Adbert Alzolay, he's back. He comes out, strikes out the side, and his first inning pitch. Obviously, the next one we know what happened. But those are good things that we're seeing out of these players, So, like I said, going back, I'm excited. I really am.
Now, we heard last week that there's mutual interest with both Carlos Rodon in the Cubs.
Yeah.
And possibly the Cubs going after a shortstop, Trey Turner. Again, There was mutual interest. Do you think that is something the Cubs should pursue, like going and getting both of them? Because I'm thinking about if they sign both of them, you move Horner over to second.
I'll take it.
Madrigal can kind of fill in DH.
Here's the thing, and I hope nobody hates me for this, and if they do, I'm sorry. But a lot of people can say, and oh yeah, you know what? I heard this, and that. But what's behind it? It could just be.
Yep.
It could just be something that somebody heard and they decided to put it out there, right? And like I said, if you don't like me, what can I say? I'm sorry, but I never feed into none of it until I see things happen. That's when I'll be like, okay, when I hear conversations from within the park or whatever it may be, right? But I don't feed into it. However, if that was the case with Carlos Rodon, I wouldn't be mad at it either. I think, I wouldn't be upset of having him on our rotation.
Yeah.
I think he could be solid for us for sure. That's one of the things that we definitely do know that we can use that. Now, going back to our infield, I really do like Nico Horner at short.
Yep.
He's been good. He's been real good at second when we've seen him there. But I really like him at short. I think he has the ability he has that long arm. He has, he's just great. And so I'm not too worried about that position in itself. I think the one that I really would worry about would be first base. And even, like I said, Morel at third, I'm happy with him there as well. And Morel, that's his natural position. That's where he likes to be. He has grown to like second base a lot as well. That was one of the conversations I had with him. He said, I really enjoyed the time that I've been there. So he's one that you can move around. So we'll see. Like I said, I don't buy into rumors at all.
Yeah,
that's smart.
One of the reasons why I kind of bring it up is that I get a sense from a lot of Cubs fans that they're kind of soured on that, the rebuild, that they didn't call it a rebuild, and that they think they're further away than they actually are. And I'm like, they're not that far away. One or two signings, and if you get another horse in the rotation, and you get one more dude that can hit, put Morel at third base where he's natural, and actually stick him there. And let him work in the offseason. Tell him, hey, you're going to be our third baseman. Go get a middle infielder, or see if Mervis can come up, or whoever first. You already have a stacked outfield, and the minors filled with guys.
Yep.
Your pitching rotation with one horse like Rodon, and all the bullpen arms that they've just flooded through the system that they have, we're not that far away. And that's why, we as a podcast, we've been pretty positive even after the deadline last year, good things are coming. Just
of course,
be patient. So
of course,
that's where.
Yeah, no, I'm there with you. I think, we've suffered because we have, when we saw last year, I was driving down Lakeshore Drive and it was after the game, and I heard the Anthony Rizzo news. That was the first one. I was like, man, no, we kind of knew it was coming, but it happened. And coming back to the ballpark after that was just horrible. We went through that roller coaster of Wilson Contreras. I said, Wilson, be have a great career, whatever you're gonna do outside of Chicago, And then I was able to talk to him right after that game, great game coming back. I said, hey, you're here, you're with the Cubs. So, so those little things, I know that a lot of people are they're upset about many things and how the team has been worked and whatnot. But that's another thing. You know, we still have to see what's going to happen with Wilson. I think, you know, that's something that there has to be a conversation about bringing Wilson back. Jan Gomes has been great, and I know Jan Gomes is still under contract for next year. So, you know, he's been great, a great mentor for all these young kids as well. I think both him and Contreras have been fantastic for these players. So it's always great to have those kind of players around regardless.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it a little bit, and Mitch led into this question pretty well. So being unfortunately super plugged into Cubs Twitter, for better or worse at times, I think that well, it's worse in some of the Facebook groups. Like those are, I mean, the people that I follow on Cubs Twitter like are pretty plugged in, but they're still like, you know, it's a wave. All season long is a wave. So I'm curious, like whenever I listen to the broadcast and it's, you know, the game's just out of hand and maybe we're on a skid, you know, like a, you know, 3, 4 game, 5 game skid this year, whatever.
Yeah.
How do you find the positives, you know, game in, game out, and how to stay enthusiastic during the tougher times, and how do you think that could translate for some of the fans? Like, what do you think the fans could take away from some of your tips?
I'll tell you this: when we have one of those horrible games, I always find I always find a way to entertain. Whether I'm singing on the broadcast, whether I'm saying a joke, you know, I'm always finding something to make sure. And you know, I have great broadcast partners because I have, I think it's 3 or 4 of them that we rotate. So my analysts, there's different personalities. So it's always good to have, just because I'm able to just interact with these guys, and each one has their forte, but they all are good with the interaction and the jokes. And so we find ways to do it. It's tough. It is. There's times where I'm like, man, this is the kind of game that I would be turning off at home, right?
Yeah,
but I can't do it.
Turn it off.
You know, I can't do it. That's not something that I can do. Yeah, it's like, you know, so I have to stick around, and I have to make sure that I try to entertain as much as I can. And it's good to have, like, for example, our broadcast, you can hear it on Marquee on the SAP option. You can flip that over. Yep. And so that's great to have. MLB app is fantastic because I get messages from around the world, Latin America. It's just fantastic to have. And so there's always something, you know, I always find a way to make sure that they suffer with me.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about Alzolay. What do you kind of expect the rest of this year and even going into next year with Alzolay? Do you see him sticking in the bullpen or being kind of like a stretch 2-inning type of guy, or what are your kind of expectations with Alzolay going forward?
Ideally, I would like him in the rotation. I think he's far away from it just because of the injury. I think that they were working their way to getting him to that point last year. And unfortunately, I think that's going to have to be the way that he's going to come, just out of the bullpen. And somewhere along I still think he can be a starting pitcher. But he's far from it right now. He needs to get those reps in. And obviously, once again, the kind of outing he had the other day, yes, he gave up that triple to, what was it? Charlie, was it Charlie? Yeah, right. It was Charlie, and gave up that
leadoff walk and then triple.
Yep. And so, you know, you're going to have it, right? You're going to have it. But at the end of the day, the way you came out, that first inning he pitched and he struck out the side, that showed you location was there, velocity was there. And maybe after that, the nerves were there as well, you know, like that can be a big part of it, you know. So I'm happy with him coming out of the rotation, being that long relief guy, because I know he can do that. So I'm good with him in that sense.
Awesome.
Pat Hughes is right behind you, Mitch.
Yeah, I looked up earlier and saw that too.
Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. We appreciate you coming on our show.
Thank you.
Your passion for the Cubs and your passion for broadcasting, and just like, I mean, it's awesome. It's infectious. It like when I first met you, like I just kind of taken away. I was like, man, this guy like is real, authentic, and relational. And so being a broadcaster, you can draw people in very well into you got that gift where you can draw people in. It's like Ron and Pat, they draw you in because you feel like you're sitting next to them on a couch, and you have
Thank
that. Just
Thank you. It was funny because when I'm up there in the booth, Field of Dreams, and I'm getting my stuff, and Miguel, I was like, who knows me here, And then Mitch, he said hello and asked if he could come take a picture, and so it was good to meet you, and I appreciate you reaching out. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jake, pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Hey, Miguel, plug your social, the network.
Yep.
Where can people hear you?
So social, Twitter, you can find me on Miguel's Voice, easy. On Instagram and Facebook, Miguel Esparza Radio. Miguel Esparza Radio, find me on there. And then you can listen to the Cubs games if you're in Chicago, 1200 a.m. or MLB app, Marquee Sports Network on SAP. And you can also find it on Univision's app, which is Uforia, Uforia. Download that app, and it's free as well.
There's all these options. There's no excuse not to tune
None.
in.
Yeah. None. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Miguel.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go Cubs.
Go Cubs.
Go Cubs.
Awesome. I mean, he's such a great dude, and just a pleasure to talk to. Like, I could talk to Miguel forever. I mean, at the Field of Dreams game, it felt like I knew him instantly. And you can tell he's been a fan. Like, he's a broadcaster, but he's also a true fan. And like they talked about, he related it to Ron Santo. Like, that's who I grew up listening to on, like, growing up on a farm. Like, we always watched the games, but we listened to games. And so, like, from the tractor radio, and it was always Ron Santo, and like, you can tell, like, he's a fan first.
Yeah. And I think that's nice. Like, it's you're broadcasting to fans, right? Like, it's okay to ride the wave with us. So it's refreshing. It's refreshing to get that, and you kind of get it. You kind of get it with Pat and Ron now. Not so much on the TV broadcast. Boog's pretty even keel. Sutcliffe, subtle bring the emotion for sure. But no, it's great. I mean, how lucky are we to get to talk to people like Miguel? I mean, the guests that we've had on this season, it's just been, it reminds me, like, wow, as much as I think I know a lot about baseball, like, there are more and more levels to know more about baseball. And that was a great conversation. And if you guys haven't checked him out on Twitter, I mean, take a look at what Mitch and I are talking about. I mean, Miguel's, his excitement is awesome. And like Mitch said, he's authentic, and like, he is a fan. He was a fan first. And that's all of our dreams, right? To be able to watch the Cubs and get paid to do it and be excited on air. Like, yes, you have to go through the doldrums, and the August, even if the Cubs are doing well, August may sometimes drag. But yeah, Miguel clearly really, really loves doing it.
I mean, just listen. Like, I have one more clip because I have to play it. Because, like, just listen to this.
Swing, le pone el bate, pero no importa, la envía hacia el jardín izquierdo, va volando y se fue. Home run, E&a-half, la botó.
I meant to ask him what Laboto means, because I looked it up. I did Google Translate. I was like, that's not it. Like, it has to mean something else. And I forgot to ask him, so I'll have to tweet at him. But I mean, it's just like, that's
But go, like, I mean, if you just do a Google search of Miguel Esparza, like, there's a ton of videos of him actually just singing, like, doing Elvis impersonations. He doesn't have them on, but if you do like a Google search of his name, like Miguel
Esparza,
Esparza on Twitter, and just search, like, I know Crowley tweeted one. But like, there was, like, he was big into the Elvis impersonations, and like, there's one of him that I was gonna post on, but like, it's great. He's awesome. So that does it for episode 98 of the Dingers podcast. We're almost to 100. So
start tweeting at Ian Happ in the compound, guys. Tom Prizeman, the producer, liked my tweet. I don't know if it doesn't mean anything, but it may mean something, Tell us who you want to tag people on Twitter, who you want to get us, to celebrate the 100th episode. Maybe it's a guest that we've had on. Obviously, if it's someone that we've had on, I think it'd be easier to get them on again. But let's, find a way to celebrate 100.
Yep. And Jeffrey's going to get his cupcake with 100 candles.
There we go.
So, all right, that does it for episode 98 of the Dingers podcast. Thanks for listening.